Good morning. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back, subscribers. And speaking of subscribers, we're about to hit another milestone. We're pushing 2,000. I can't believe it. When I started this channel, I really never thought I'd hit 1,000 subscribers. Now to some people, that might be a little tiny bit, but to me, 2,000 is pretty big. So if you're just tuning into this channel and you might be a new subscriber, I want to let you know what you're in for. So right now, we're building a deck. But you never know what I'm going to be doing. Sam's Doing Stuff is the name of the channel. We have a 7-acre property here with barns that need a lot of work, and the land needs a lot of work, and home improvement is my thing. I've been doing it all my life, and my dad has taught me most everything I know, and I'm still learning. So as we go along, you and I are going to learn together, and no matter what project I'm working on, we're definitely going to learn some stuff, because when you think you know everything, that's when you get screwed. So anyway, let's continue on with this deck project. So we're working on the railing now. Oh, it's the icing on the cake. These steps are just like, it's such a relief. So we're gonna start with these railing sleeves, okay? And quite frankly, this step, I think a monkey could do it. It's the easiest part of this whole deck project. But there's one key thing you need to know, and that is with this skirt that goes around the bottom, you have to put the skirt on first. Why? Well, you don't have to, but if you put the sleeve on first and then put the skirt over, you risk scratching the entire length of your post sleeve, and you don't want to do that. So we're gonna put the skirt on first, and just kind of center it, kill the ants if you find any. Then you're gonna put the sleeve over the top, and just kind of squeeze it a little bit till it fits and set it down in there, just like that. Now, if you'll recall, when we cut these posts, I made sure that I did not cut the posts so that they would come up above the sleeve. And this has turned out just about perfect. So then, of course, just repeat that with every single post, which I've already done. I've also set out all of my railing kits. I like to work organized. I think it's super important to be organized, especially when you're working with this many pieces parts. So all of the kits are set out. I counted them all out, set out everything that I need for each section, and it's ready to go. I also reorganized all my tools. You don't necessarily need a miter saw. You can use a hacksaw, but I have a miter saw, so of course I'm going to use it. I figure the more comfortable I am, the better work I'm going to do. So I set it up on this stand, and I'll just move it around as I need. And of course, everything that I had in my tractor is now in this little red wagon, because just a couple of drivers, a drill, you know, your basic tools is all you're going to need. You're supposed to cut this piece a 1/2 inch shy to leave room for these spacers and all the connectors and such. So I've got 2.5 inches from the hole to the end here, and on this end I've got about 3 inches to the hole. So when I cut 1/2 inch, I'm not going to cut a 1/4 off of each end. I'm going to cut the full 1/2 inch off of this end, and then it should fit perfectly spaced in between. Okay, I'm set up to cut my rails now. We got our measurements exactly the way we want them. Marked it with a black Sharpie. That's probably the best thing to mark with. And I'm going to cut both the top and bottom rail at the same time with this miter saw, which is why it's a good idea to use a miter saw. And I figure using the Trex blade has got to be good enough for this. So here we go. Next step, they provide these foam strips. They're supposed to go on the top and the bottom of this. And you feed it all the way through. Boy, it's gonna be fun with a full-length piece. Anyway, you feed this all the way through, and you cut it off. And then you're supposed to just peel the stickum off the ends and have it so that the balusters rest on the foam. I guess that keeps them from rattling around or making noise. And it pulled the whole thing out. This is the worst part of the whole job. Okay, now I know this doesn't need it. This section of railing is what? Not even, it's 20 inches is what it is. So first of all, you want to cut 2 3-inch blocks, and that helps to support your bottom rail evenly. Then they give you a support block to put underneath. Now, like I said, obviously this doesn't need it. for this short of a piece. But for aesthetics, I think I'm going to put it in because every other piece is going to have one. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Oh, by the way, these are square drive. Okay, so do not cut 3-inch blocks. They are absolutely wrong when they tell you to do that. You're going to want to cut 2 7/8. So what I would suggest doing is I would take the measurement of this small bottom block and I would cut your wooden blocks to that length, because now I can put these down and I know that that bottom is touching. The next step in the instructions says to assemble the top and bottom rail with the balusters in between, hold it together, and then install this metal bracket on the top rail. I think I'm going to install the bracket on the top rail first, because I'm pretty sure it's going to just fall apart if I try and put this on after I put the balusters in, especially on a full-size rail. When you put these on, don't tighten them all the way. Give it some play. You'll tighten it later. And now I'm going to assemble it with the balusters. Okay, now comes the fun part. The whole thing's assembled. We're going to set it up in place. You got your 3-inch blocks, actually 2 7/8 blocks down at the bottom. Get it in between the rails, gently down in place, and there. Now we need to attach it. So now you're using these 2.5-inch square drive screws. So the next piece to put on is this cover right here. This just covers up all the ugly bits. Anyway, you have to stretch it to get it over this. So the best way to stretch it is it's narrower this way than it is wide this way. So start from the side, go over, and snap it in place, like that. Then the last step for the top rail is you're gonna take 2 of these 1.5-inch screws. I'd pre-drill them. I'm gonna pre-drill all of this through this plastic, and this secures this cover in place. You're gonna use 1.25 inch, which is all that's left, screws on the bottom. They go in at an angle into these little plastic brackets that you put on before you put the railing up. And finally, these little covers just go on over top of the screws, slide them up in place. Kit is installed, and let me tell you something, it's a Veranda Home Depot brand railing kit, and it looks beautiful. It really, you'll see the whole thing at the end, but it looks great. But there are some things that are a real pain, and that you really should look out for it. I'm not saying not to buy it and that you shouldn't use it because of this stuff, but first of all, square drive screws. I absolutely hate these things. They don't hold the bit, and they slip and they strip. Why they didn't use Torx, I don't know, but this is awful. So fight with these as much as you want, but that was a very big challenge. Another challenge is inside, you saw that they give you this foam that the balusters sit into. That's a pain in the butt to install. That's not fun at all. There's a trick to it. You know, you stick to one end, and then I didn't stick the other end at all. I just left a little bit hanging out, and I kind of held it in place while I put the balusters in, because the balusters are going to hold it there forever anyway. So that part of it. Then you definitely need to have a second set of hands. Now, my dad's not here this morning, and we're going to be doing this gate, but I don't know if it's even possible to do by yourself without screwing it up anyway. It's certainly easier having somebody else there. My dad's 86, and you know, just having somebody hold something in place was a huge help, huge. So then another thing, don't trust them to have cut everything accurately. The holes on the pieces, when you got the top rail and the bottom rail, if you line up two ends, the holes are not going to line up straight. So when you have to cut them to fit, make sure you take a square, maybe a speed square, and line up the holes so you know that you're cutting both ends equally. That's very important. So now we're going to get to this gate kit. I got everything out, I got my tools all out, and I'm all set up here. And then I realized, well, I could assemble this in the garage because it's a hot, hot day. But I'm already set up out here, so we're going to do it out here. These are all your parts right here. And the first thing, of course, is going to be to measure and cut to make sure your rails, top and bottom, are going to fit the space for your gate. This kit says it can do from a 36-inch gate to a 48-inch gate maximum. I also want to point out, if I line these up at the end, these holes don't line up. That's what I said before. Even if I line it up at this end, yeah, these holes do not line up. So you want to make sure when you're marking your pieces to be cut, take your square and line those holes up so you know your top and bottom rails are going to be straight with each other, and that'll make your balusters plumb. So when I measure my space here, I've got 44 inches. Now I need to cut the rails to 2 inches shorter than that. So I'm going to end up with a 42-inch rail, but I want to cut 1 inch off of each end so that my balusters all stay even from the ends of the rails. A couple of notes before I make these cuts. First of all, there is a metal rail inside of these for support. So make sure the blade you're using is able to cut that. Secondly, I'm going to stress this again. I've got my square with me, and I've marked on one rail where I want to make these cuts. Make sure the holes are lined up with each other and not the ends. So once I've got the holes lined up, then I can move my mark into place, line up my cut, and go ahead and make my cut. I'm double checking that those holes are in line. We're good. All right. Before I even get to the next step of this, I just want to point something out. These are the side rails where the bottom and top rails get inserted. And I just want to show you, this is what you get from the factory. Those are not square. I mean, they're off by just a little bit, but I hope you can see on camera, they're not square. So I'm debating whether I should take that on my miter saw and just true that up. There we go. That's perfect. Yeah, sorry, Veranda. I'm not putting up with your crap. Next step is going to be to pre-assemble this thing. So definitely get a framing square. Make sure this is square. It'll at least give you a visualization of what square is. We're going to install all of these balusters in each hole. Now I would do this the way I'm doing it here, laying it down. I certainly wouldn't try doing this standing up by yourself. You're going to have to glue this and then let it sit for 15 minutes. So you might as well have it lying down while you're doing this step. And then definitely, the way to do any railing, start at one end, go at an angle, and you're pushing down with the rail to push it into place. And as you push each section, it's going to take up that space, and they're not going to fall out. Don't pull the railing up to the top. Push this down on it, just like that. So your next step is going to be to glue this all together. So in these pockets here, you want to put the glue on the outside rim of all four sides. Then when you insert the rails into these pockets, it will push the glue and spread it evenly. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna put the glue on these pockets. I'll do 2, put that side together, and then do the other 2 and put it together. I think I'm gonna set it up on its edge and push down on it. Yeah, definitely do that. That was a good idea, because that was not completely together. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, it's gonna sit and dry for 15 minutes. I'll be right back. Notice how nicely it sits since these ends are nice and square? All right, Veranda. Next, gotta put some screws in the end of these. Apparently 2.5-inch screws to go down through here. Now they're gonna be going down through the metal brackets that are on the insides of these rails. And it's just gonna, I guess, hold it all together. All right, we're gonna start by pre-drilling these 1/8-inch bit. And we're gonna do one corner right here. And the next corner over here. You're gonna do the same thing on the other 3 corners. They're 2.5-inch screws because it goes all the way through this pocket, and that gives it stability from racking, so they don't need a cross brace on them. Good job, Veranda, that's smart. So next step is we need to glue these caps on to cover up these screws. And if I had not cut these square, when this whole thing is assembled and I hang this gate, these caps would have been crooked. And I certainly would have noticed it when it's hanging there next to all of this wonderfully square and plumb railing. It would look wonky. So I'm glad I cut those and made them square. All right, I'm just gonna put a little dab of PVC glue on the tabs and put them in place. Okay, I let that dry for 15 minutes, just like the other PVC glue that we put on, and it should be ready to put hinges on. Now, before we go to that step, I just want to let you know, if you find a little scratch on this that doesn't seem to come off with just water and a rag, try Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. It really works well on this plastic PVC stuff. Cleans it right up. So anyway, determine which side you want up and determine which side you want the hinges on. We're gonna put the hinges on this side, and it's gonna open toward the house there, because that's the most useless space on the deck, is that little area right there. Probably put a door stop or something to keep it from hitting the house, but it'll be the least obtrusive way for this gate to open. Now, after determining which side you want your hinges on, which way the gate's gonna swing, you're ready to install your hinges. These hinges, I am absolutely thrilled to find out, are self-closing. They're spring-loaded. They come with this little Allen wrench key, and if you depress the top, you can change the tension on it. So I loosen the tension all the way so that they'll lay flat, but when it's all hung, I'm gonna tension that back up, and these will spring load and close the gate automatically, which is fantastic because this is going to eventually lead to a pool, and you want that gate to stay closed for safety. So before I mark where these go, I wanna let you know it's very important that the bottom screw on this hinge goes through the bottom rail on the gate, and the same with the top rail on the gate. That is going to be your strength for these hinges, because there's a metal insert in here, and that screw will go through that metal insert, and then it's not just plastic holding your hinge on. Once you've determined where the screw goes, there are little ridges right here. It's pretty much idiot proof. You can line the edge of your vertical rail up with that, and that's where your screw is going to go. I'll show you. This simply butts right up against the edge of that rail. Then all you have to do is determine up and down where you want it. I'm going to put that screw right in the center of the rail. Right there. And right there. Be careful not to strip out that top one. It's only going into plastic. Next, I'm installing the striker. I'm using the same principle as the hinges. I know there's metal behind here, and that will make it stronger. So I'm going to line it up with the center. Make sure it's straight. Mark my holes. I'm going to set the gate on the blocks. Make sure my gate is level. I'm not too thrilled that I've got to use the same short little screws to go into these wood posts. I will probably end up replacing these with longer screws. So now that the gate is hung, and it swings nicely, it's time to install your striker latch. Striker latch or striker catch, whichever you want to call it. So always, always, always put the striker on the gate first, and then put the latch on, because then you know, with the gate hung and swinging, exactly where that's going to hit. So you're just going to put it so that the catch hits it perfectly. Double check it. Yeah, right there is good. The very last step I'm going to do is I'm going to just adjust this a little bit, tighten the tension on it. Let's see about that. Somebody opens the gate. Yeah, that's pretty nice. So there you have it. The gate's installed. Next, we're going to do stair railings. And my dad has to come over for that because I cannot do that by myself. Good morning. Got my dad here with me this morning. He's off camera. We're trying to get things done before it gets too hot. It's supposed to hit 90 degrees today. So we're doing stair rails. Stair rails come in an actual kit for stair rails. I don't know if you can see that there. This is the composite stair kit. There's a couple of little differences. The main difference between the railing kits and the stair rail kits, they cut these into ovals, so when the balusters go in, they can go in at an angle. The balusters are the same length, pretty much identical to the ones that go in the railings. I would like to say that we probably had at least a dozen of these that have been scratched up in packaging and shipping. So luckily, with all of the adjustments we've had to make to the length of each rail set, we've got quite a few extras. But yeah, gotta watch those. The paint gets scratched on them, and we've had to throw quite a few away. So once you've got everything unpackaged, a little pro tip here, take a couple of 2x4s and set them equidistant back on 2 steps so you have a consistent spacing, and you can just lay your bottom rail across the 2x4s. Now I want to say there's not a lot of tolerance for this set. It pretty much has to go exactly where it has to go. But what this is going to do is it's going to let you be consistent from top to bottom, lay your rail, and you'll be able to mark it in place so you know exactly where to cut it. You can get your angle at which to cut your rails a couple of ways. This is my dad's sliding T-bevel, and you can just set it down here and set it to the back of your stairs. It gives you the exact angle, which happens to be 33.5 degrees for us. So you'll just transfer that measurement to your saw, but you can also, with the way we got it set up here, double check yourself by setting your rail and then taking that exact angle and putting it right there, and you can see we have the right angle to cut our rail. And now once you have your angle, of course, you want to measure and get an exact same distance between the top and bottom rail, just like you would with any other set of railing. So now we got our marks, we got our saw set to 33.5 degrees, we're ready to cut. So now that you've got your bottom rail cut exactly perfect, you're going to cut your top rail. Now, just like I've told you through this whole process, you've got to line up your holes. And on this, it's actually a nice nifty trick to make sure you get them both exactly the same. So just set your top rail right along with your bottom rail on the saw and make sure the holes are perfectly lined up. Make sure your cut's coming down exactly where it needs to come. And you're going to want to hold this really tightly against the fence because it wants to creep. It's very slippery. So make sure you get a good grip on it. It's tight against the fence, and you're gonna cut your top rail to match your bottom. Do the exact same thing at the other end. All right, we got our top and bottom rails cut exactly to the right length. So now you gotta put this fun stuff in. Oh, I hate this part. It's not as bad on the railings, the stair railings. All right, we got our foam inserts in, and we put the ends on each rail, top and bottom, and we're about ready to start assembling it. Set it in between the posts, right about where you want it. Now, like I said before, this doesn't have any tolerance as far as up or down. These posts are as long as they are. It's the way they come, and you got to go all the way down to the bottom with this piece right here in order for the whole thing to fit. So I put this right down against the skirt. I'm going to drill some 1/8 inch holes, and you run the short screws in the bottom and the long screws in the top. So I'm going to go ahead and put some screws in this, and then we'll start assembling it. All right, now you're going to put your balusters in. All right, made our modifications. Apparently you got to customize all of these. Let's get that in there to start and slide each one. Well, it wasn't easy, but it's done.
Yeah, and it looks good.
Yes, that's the important part. When it's all said and done, if it looks good, who cares what you went through to get there, right? Oh, well, hey, this deck is almost done. All I have to do is cover up all this ugly wood with the fascia, and then it's gonna be it. So next Saturday, we're gonna put the fascia on, just show you real quick how that goes on, and I'm gonna give you all the befores and afters of this whole build. And honestly, I just really want it to be done. So we'll have all the befores and after for you next Saturday. This deck will be done, and I can move on to doing more stuff. See you then.